Welcome back to Odyssey Astrology. I'm Victor, and today I want to talk about how we're all involved with the world politically, whether we realize it or not. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in this debate, which may or may not be manufactured for us, between two parties, 2 points of view, 2 perspectives. And the first thing to realize about it is we are being told that there's 2 choices. We are being told that politics exists on a straight line in one dimension between point A and point B, between conservative and liberal, Republican and Democrat, or whatever country you live in. Oftentimes it's between 2 sort of rival parties, maybe 3, but in the US, 2. And so we're taught and programmed to believe that on issues of healthcare, national defense, everything, there's basically 2 policy choices. And nothing could be further from the truth. There are infinite policy choices, and politics exists in 3 dimensions, not 1 dimension. But because of our political system, because of our 2-party system, we are given 2 choices. And so in the whole realm of possibilities for policies, for politics, for decisions, for important decisions, we are stuck on a straight line between 2 points of view, when there are infinite points of view, and there are infinite solutions to different problems facing us. And there can be a 3rd point. And if there's 3 points, you can have a plane, and you can have anything within that area possible and in play in terms of a policy solution or legislation. And then if you have 4 points or more, you can have a cube, or you can have a 3-dimensional object. And then the possibilities and the colors and the depth of different solutions and conversations becomes infinitely great. Instead of just shades of gray between black and white, or between right and left, conservative and liberal, Republican, Democrat. And even for different specific policies where we are taught to believe, we grow up believing, even programmed to believe that one party has the solution or the other party has the solution. One party is the champion of the businessman, one party is the champion of the oppressed. Well, Malcolm X had a very interesting perspective, which really cuts through party politics, in my opinion. And this was during the 60s, during, people were trying to get blacks and whites integrated in America, black Americans and white Americans. Back then, the race problems were much more in your face. You couldn't go to the same high school as a white person or a black person. You had to go to a high school of people with the same race. And if you've seen the Disney movie, Remember the Titans, that's about that sort of integration. And you had white bathrooms and black bathrooms, and that wasn't that long ago. So that was the world Malcolm X was living in. It's a little bit different today, but still there's lots of tensions and issues we haven't overcome. But he said the American liberal differs only from the American conservative and how deceitful he is. He said with regards to sort of pandering to the black American voting bloc, he said both the Republicans and the Democrats, both the conservatives and the liberals, have their own selfish motivations for what they want to do. But the American conservative is a wolf. And so black Americans run away from the Republican Party. But he said the American liberal, speaking largely of the American Democrats, is a fox. And he said the fox differs only from the wolf, the liberal differs only from the conservative, and how deceitful he is. He said the American liberal promises things to black Americans. They promise help, they promise solutions. But once black Americans relax and give them their votes, they take them in their mouth and they use them for their own selfish purposes. And so he was a man who saw through this black and white split in American politics, and he saw that a lot of this sort of theater that we buy into is manufactured and false. And it's manufactured because mostly, by and large, the politicians of whatever ideology and whatever party affiliation are mostly interested in themselves, mostly interested in maintaining and consolidating their party power. And so someone like Malcolm X, he said, we have to look through this. We have to look through this linear split and look beyond and see what's really happening. And that's the kind of perspective we need. And I think that a lot of times also we get at each other's throats because, oh, you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, you voted for so-and-so, you voted for so-and-so, I can't like you because this is my demographic, this is my race, this is, I'm from this state, I'm from this city. and we grow up believing, oh, we can't have harmonious relations with people from different demographics, different states, different points of view. But that's just, it's manufactured, it's plastic, it's not real. There's, we can all be concerned about sort of healthcare or race relations or foreign policy, and there's solutions that go beyond what we're being told are possibilities. There's possibilities that transcend this very linear black and white debate that is being forced on us by politicians, by media, by whatever, and it goes so much deeper than that. And I think the more we, as spiritual people, realize that there's something much deeper going on than this very superficial sort of linear policy debate between left and right. I think we can say that vibration precedes legislation. Legislation is not really a consequence of debates. Legislation is not really a consequence of who we vote for. Legislation, like everything else in my opinion, is a consequence of the vibration of a state and of a country. And if the vibration of a state and a country rises through feeling the pain, feeling hereditary emotional pain that we get from our ancestors and our family, feeling the pain of our own faults, growing through that, making an effort to be more joyful, making an effort to be more at peace, the more we find our own sense of fulfillment and completion spiritually as spiritual beings and human beings, the more we are kind to other people, the more we are strong, the more that our country, even politically, and even with regards to the specific legislation that's passed, will come out at a higher level. I think that countries are dependent on the people. Countries are an amalgam of everyone who lives in them. And we get caught up in this very superficial debate, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. And what happens politically in a country, I think, is an expression and a manifestation of what's happening spiritually in a country. And what's happening spiritually in a country is nothing more than the amalgam and the combination of what's happening in the U.S., for example, with 300 million individuals. We can't say, oh, this state's doing that state's doing that. No. What one state is doing is whatever number of millions of people living there are doing on a vibrational level, on a spiritual level. And if everyone in the country starts being nice to each other, and not necessarily nice, sometimes we have to be strong and be upfront with people, but when we all vibrate at a higher frequency, when we respect each other, when we respect ourselves, then politics will really change. Tupac said, before we find world peace, we've got to find peace and in the war on the streets. Which is to say, before we find world peace, we've got to find peace within ourselves. We've got to find peace within our communities. We've got to solve problems on a micro scale before solving problems on a macro scale is even a relevant conversation. Before we talk about finding world peace, we've got to find our own peace. We've got to solve our problems in our community. We've got to solve our problems in our city. And no sort of Leviathan, no sort of federal government can do that, no matter who's controlling it. It's like expecting your parents to solve your own problems for you. It's like expecting your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend or father or mother or friend to solve your own problem with anger for you. If we have a problem with greed on an individual level, we're going to have a problem with greed collectively, and no amount of legislation is going to fix that. No amount of debate is going to fix that. No amount of words are going to fix that. The only thing that's going to fix that is if we ourselves fix ourselves, and we fix our own problem with greed by being more generous. We fix our own problem of being discriminatory by being more respectful and more humanitarian. We're going to fix our own problems of being stuck in a linear debate by the next time someone says something inflammatory at a dinner table, we don't get caught into that same ancient sort of debate that just regenerates itself through hatred and through antagonism time and time again. Antagonism and hatred is not the solution to anything. If someone says something inflammatory at your dinner table, rise above it. You can tell them, don't do that here, but don't engage with it. Just let's collectively stop engaging in this very antagonistic, hateful argument. If we want to talk about politics, let's be calm. That's the first thing. And when we're calm and happy, it's easier for our minds to get out of this one-dimensional debate we're trapped in. That's filled with antagonism and hatred and small-mindedness. Nothing is more stuck in in selfishness and this race or this demographic or that demographic or this or rich or poor than just being stuck in this anger and this hatred about one-dimensional politics, black and white politics. There's other solutions, and the beginning of it is to rise above this own state in ourselves emotionally and to start looking for problems in our own communities or solutions to problems in our own communities. And if we can take care of these problems individually and on a sort of municipal or community level, then things are going to resolve themselves on a state level. And then if a lot of states do that, things are going to resolve themselves on a national level. And if even a few countries do that, things will start to resolve themselves on a global level. But we don't understand how much these policies and these wars and these hatreds and these even famines are just perpetuated by this same sort of negative emotional cycle of hatred, of anger, of violence, of greed. And so instead of being caught in this conversation about which party, which candidate's going to fix it, neither of them are going to fix it ever. We have to fix it. And we don't have to fix it by being empowered as voters as much as we have to fix it by being empowered as human beings to overcome our own faults and to help other people overcome their faults by seeing the best in them and helping them along in that way rather than being so critical of everyone because of one small difference in ideology or one small difference in skin color. We're all human beings, and that's the most important thing. And so the more we can tune into it on that level and realize that vibration is going to precede legislation. Legislation is going to be dependent on vibration. In one way or another, if we vibrate at a higher level, legislation will vibrate at a higher level. And when it vibrates at a higher level, it's going to be a solution no one's ever talked about. That's going to be for darn sure. It's going to come out in a way, it's going to be given birth to in a way that no one can anticipate because we haven't engaged with politics, we haven't engaged with society on that level yet. When we bring our own vibration up, when we overcome our own negative emotions and psychological fears and these ideas of difference, and we engage with each other as human beings and as brothers and sisters, somehow better representatives are going to get into government. Somehow better politicians are going to find their way in. And it has nothing to do with party. It has to do with vibration. It has to do with selflessness. It has to do with being a servant rather than being self-serving. And when all that happens, everything will change. Everything will change. When you work on what's unseen, work on what's below the level of the water in that iceberg visualization. Let's stop pestering each other about what's going on in this 10% that we can see that's floating above water and start all together going deeper underwater and seeing the 90% of the iceberg that's hidden and that's not visible. And when we can do that, spiritually things will improve and definitely politically things will improve. So let's look deeper, even politically, and rise above these petty differences that we've hereditarily propagated and perpetuated with these negative emotional cycles and discriminatory patterns of thinking.